If you are sensitive to descriptions of animal cruelty or injuries and descriptions of murder, please be aware this episode is a dark one. Probably no eating.
Eavesdroppin.
Anyway.
Woo! All right, bring it on. Here we are. Whew! Okay, hop, hop, hop. It's Eavesdroppin, the podcast, hosted by me, Geordie, and you,
Michelle. Hello.
Hi. How are you doing today, Michelle?
Well, I'll tell you right now, I did not read the news this week.
No.
We had a big news drop in it
We
last
read
week,
all
so-
the news last week, didn't we? That was all we needed.
All the news. Although my mother, Jen, she did send me a link to a news article on Melissa Caddick.
That was Shady Ladies, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Part 2?
Shady Ladies. Yeah, I think it could have been. Gosh, along with, was that with Leslie Manukian?
That's right.
Yes. So Melissa Caddick, apparently, well, she still hasn't been found. We disagree on this because
We
I
do.
still think she is living in the Bahamas with a bionic foot. You believe she's dead.
I don't think that.
Who knows?
I think that a sociopath who really only cares about themselves would never think to cut their foot off just to get out of something.
Well, according to your psychopath test, I'm part psychopath. And I'm telling you, if I had all that money, if I'd run away with tens of millions,
Would you though?
and all it cost me was a foot,
Would you
I
though?
might consider it. I don't know. Anyway, I don't know.
I can see you there
But
with the
apparently-
hacksaw, kind of like putting it on your foot and then going, I can't. No. I
can't do it.
No.
Oh, gosh. Yeah, I
Imagine
don't know.
sawing through a fucking foot. You'd need a lot of aspirin.
Well, I wouldn't do it myself. I'll get a professional to do it.
But that means you're including
will
somebody else. You'll have to kill them afterwards.
Yeah, I got the money. Who cares?
Jeez.
Anyway,
Right.
so apparently, update on Melissa.
Okay.
Her parents, who I actually feel a bit sorry for in this instance, they. Oh, can I just actually, before I get on to Melissa Caddick, apologies for last week because I said Liz Dawson
Instead of Lynette.
Lynn Dawson.
Lynette
Yeah,
Dawson.
Lynn Dawson. And I also said fire pilot instead of a fighter pilot. I wasn't even drunk
Pilot.
when I said those.
Okay.
Yeah, so apologies to that. But back to Melissa. Yes, her poor parents, they actually gave her over $1 million to invest. And she nicked their money
Oh,
as well.
what a bitch.
Now they are being faced with eviction from their house because of Melissa. So I do feel sorry for her.
Well, going back to, you just mentioned your friend Liz Dawson, or AKA Lynette Dawson, who was married to, what was his name? Was it Chris?
Chris Dawson, yes. Oh, I think I saw something in the paper about that too.
He's being, I can't remember now.
pulled over the coals.
He's been arrested.
Again?
No, he's in prison. He's had a couple of falls. I think he's in prison, or he's awaiting trial. His trial's going to be next year sometime. We're going to have to come back to you on that one because clearly since I read the news this morning and now I have forgotten. But one thing I do know is that NXIVM, do you remember very early on in our first season, we talked about the
Keith Raniere.
sex cult, NXIVM, like sex trafficking, Keith Raniere, and his number 2, or one of the very high ups, was an actress called Allison Mack, who was also in Smallville back in the day. I don't even remember what era that was. She, for her part she had like a subsection of the sex cult called DOS, which was where women were getting branded in intimate areas, and they would also blackmail them with information that was falsely presented by these women, but still kept on as what's it called, collateral, if they wanted to ever leave. So they were busted wide open, and the whole thing came crumbling down. Raniere's in prison, and now Allison Mack has been sentenced to 3 years in prison for her part. And
Is Raniere in prison or is he dead?
no, he's alive.
He's dead.
No, since when?
Oh, I'm getting him mixed up with the other sex offenders. Oh, sorry.
All
keep
the
going.
others, and she got fined 20 grand as well. Oh,
Is that all?
Yeah.
I would have expected more.
I think the thing was she should have come forward a bit sooner and thrown Keith under the bus, but she refused to because I think she was still in his thrall.
Yeah, she was in his mental and emotional clutches.
That's right. And then she can go back and say, I was in his mental and emotional clutches and I wasn't responsible for any of the things I did. Therefore, just give me 3 years and a 20 grand fine. Thanks.
Yeah. Oh, gosh. Well, there you go.
Yeah.
Good updates.
Michelle, today we have 2, I think, quite harrowing stories. So I just want to come in hard and fast with a trigger, warning, warning, trigger, warning. Look out! Trigger,
Oh, my goodness.
warning.
Chips.
Brace yourself, Mavis. Because it's going to be a rough ride.
It is going to be a rough ride. Well, so tell me, what are we talking about today?
Well, I have been wanting for a long time to talk about what I knew as the Streatham Cat Killer, but was actually the Croydon Cat Killer, and then became known as, and you'll soon find out why, the UK Cat Killer.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
I would listen to the radio and there'd be call-ins about this. That's how it piqued my interest way back in, I think, about 2015. I heard about it for the first time, and it's still going on today. And,
What?
well, I think
This
so.
isn't a cold case.
No.
This is an active case.
It's active, man. And the reason why it piqued my interest to talk about this time round was because in the paper I read the other day when we were doing our Eavesdroppin episode, I came across an article about a trial that was being held in Brighton, East Sussex, not far from here. There was a series of nighttime cat killings, 16 cats between October 2018 and June 19. Where horrified cat owners would find their pets bleeding on their doorsteps, which sounds very similar to the
my
UK
God.
Cat Killer.
Oh, my
They
God.
named all the cats, which was very kind. I'm not going to do it here because I think we'll run out of time, but just know that 9 died and 7 were injured. And they got the guy because he made a slip up. This guy is called Stephen Bouquet. He's 54 years old and he's a Brighton security guard. Not the security guard for Brighton itself. Just a security guard from Brighton, I think is what he is. And he'd previously denied 16 counts of criminal damage and possession of a knife. But when he was arrested, Bouquet told police officers that he was no threat to animals. However, photos of 2 of the cats were found on his phone. So he was
Oh, my
bang to
God.
rights.
Can I just tell you, I know I once in an episode told our neighbour's cat to piss off, but I'm actually a massive cat lover.
Yeah.
You know,
I am.
I think about
Yeah.
Jen and Rexy.
Oh.
If anything ever happened to Rexy, God, my mum would be distraught. I would be distraught. The whole
Yeah.
family would be distraught. Cats have always been part of our family.
Same
and
here.
who, oh my God, who could do this
Well, listen,
to an animal?
can I just give a shout out to Jen and say, trigger warning, darling, because here it comes. I'm going to tell you a few stories about what happened.
God.
Tina Randall found her 11-year-old cat Gideon injured in November 2018. She immediately thought it was a stab wound. And Gideon eventually recovered from the 3/4-inch wound, but his vet bills for his surgery came to more than £1,600. So not only are they, losing their beloved cats, but if they survive, and they obviously want them to, it costs a heap of money to go to the vets.
It's an arm and a leg.
It sure
Jesus.
is. Anyway, Sussex police were stumped for months over the attacks, but a breakthrough came when a CCTV camera set up by an owner of a killed cat appeared to capture a fresh attack on his camera. So he was caught out that way. Sentencing has been set for 12th of July, which is in a few days, so I'll be able to give you an update next week about this. So anyway, that led me to ponder the Croydon Cat Killer, a.k.a. Streatham Cat Killer, a.k.a. UK Cat Killer, which you claim to not know anything about. Is that right? Have you not heard about this?
No, I don't. Which is unusual because obviously, Brixton is very close to Streatham,
Yeah.
just down the road from Croydon. We, at this time, probably you were living in that triangle of area when you had been in Forest Hill. You were in...
I was never in Forest Hill. I was in Brockley.
Oh, Broccoli. Yes.
I was in Brockley. I was in Catford. I was in all those lovely places.
Yeah, which is all in that triangle
Yeah.
of Streatham, Croydon. So I am surprised I haven't heard about it. But
Yeah.
I'm bracing myself.
Okay,
I'm
well,
bracing myself.
brace yourself, Jen. Brace yourself, Michelle. Here it comes. This is the name, UK Cat Killer, given to a hypothetical individual alleged to have killed, dismembered and decapitated more than 400, that's right, 400 cats
Oh my God.
and various other animals across England, beginning in 2014 in Croydon. So
Right.
cat deaths that have been attributed to this killer were spread across and around Greater London and as far north as Manchester, hence UK cat killer.
Right.
Yeah.
It's branching out.
What the person would do, this cat killer, person or persons, because they're not sure if there's more than one or if they're copycat, excuse the pun. They're being caught and decapitated in most cases. In some cases, their tails are being chopped off too, and then they're found near their homes, posed, usually by their owners, sadly.
Oh my God. Do you think this is personal?
Well, no, because of 400 cats across the country, I don't.
Yeah, okay.
But I'll go on to talk about that later. The killer, who began their reign of terror in Croydon, South London, back in 2014, is believed to have killed... I've just thought of Yannicka and baby Poppy, her little Poppy pet. Oh, okay, Yannicka, put your headphones on, darling. Don't listen. Because she loves her cat very much. The killer, who began their reign of terror in Croydon, South London, back in 2014, is believed to have killed and maimed around 400 animals around a 117 stretch of the M25 motorway, which is the circle all the way around London. Also thought to be included were pet rabbits, as well as deer, wild deer, squirrels, foxes, and reports of these animals being found maimed and decapitated and posed were coming in by the public throughout this time.
Well, Well, your guinea pigs are safe, thank God.
They are
They're not
being
on the
watched all the time. I will never let them out on their own. The animals are killed and dismembered using a machete or garden shears, it is believed, because obviously they haven't caught this perpetrator, so they can't tell you.
Bloody hell. A machete.
I know.
Fucking hell.
So there's more info coming. Detectives who were working on the case initially believed the killer tempts the cat with treats before bludgeoning them to death with sharp objects. Then they believe that there's a period of about 30 minutes to allow the blood to coagulate before he mutilates them, often cutting off their paws, tails, and heads. Sorry. Often there's no
Massive
blood.
Trigger warning.
I know, huge trigger warning.
Jesus.
Often there's no blood trail at the scene that led police to believe the animals were being taken away to be dismembered before the killer returns to dump their bodies back at the scene where they were killed. Police believe the killer has ties to the Addiscombe area in Croydon. I don't know if anyone knows Croydon, because that's where the trail sort of seems to begin.
Okay.
So I'm going to go through a few cases. Going back to February 2016, and that's a couple of years after his... Well, we're not going to call him his because we don't know who it is. That's a couple of years after the reign of terror began. Animal rights charity PETA offered a $5,000 reward to anyone who had information that could lead to the arrest of the killer, and that was later raised to $10,000 by PETA.
Honestly, I would contribute to that.
Yeah.
I would send money for that reward because this guy doesn't deserve to live.
Right. Well, vet reports said, trigger warning, vet reports said that in several of the decapitated cats found in the Croydon area, incisions had been made with a weapon like a knife, but not a scalpel because the incisions were too long for that. This is from one vet who did actually do postmortems on some of these cats. In a couple of cases, he revealed that raw chicken was found in the cat's stomachs, suggesting that the animals had probably been lured by the killer. One vet suggests that he thinks they're being strangled and then taken off site to be butchered, and then the bodies are being returned and dumped, and that's why there's no blood found at the scene.
Oh my God.
So
this is heavy.
I'm sorry, guys. As the killings progressed, the decapitations had vastly improved in surgical competency, and the vet feared initially that the cats were being hacked to death because the cuts were really random, but the incisions have become much more precise, which suggests they are being killed first.
Well, or do you think if you, as your suggestion of maybe more than one, somebody who initially had no experience has teamed up with someone who has surgical experience? Or they just got better at it because they've done it
They
so
started,
much.
yeah. The killer is thought to have worn gloves and protective clothing when catching their cats because DNA analysis has found no evidence of foreign material beneath their claws. And you can imagine trying to catch a cat. Most of them don't want to be caught anyway.
Nope.
So this is from a lecturer and historian of crime and reporting of crime, a guy called Richard Ward at the University of Exeter. Now, he says he has the view that the Croydon Cat Killer case is an example of moral panic and that the animals were killed through misadventure, car accidents and whatnot. He didn't say whatnot.
What?
Yeah. He thinks it was just he thinks people are up in arms about something that's just naturally happened. But I say, Well, I've got some stories for you in a little while which is going to prove that theory to be blown out of the water, because why are they being posed? Anyway.
And also, like, incisions with the sharp knife, that doesn't happen from a cat being run over. That's just bullshit. This guy is just trying to put down the hysteria.
Yeah.
That's all.
Well, so there's a group of people from Greater London that call themselves SNARL, SNARL, and they have a Facebook page. You can look that up afterwards, Michelle, if you want to contribute. South Norwood Animal Liberation and Rescue, they are, and I had a look at their Facebook page. I've heard them on the radio before regarding this case.
Mm-hmm.
They specialise in the rescue and rehabilitation of poorly treated, abused and sick cats and other animals, but mostly they are after whoever is doing this. They are the only organisation.
Vigilantes.
Yeah, they're currently the only organisation who are actively investigating the UK cat killer.
Not police.
I'll get to that.
Oh,
By
sorry.
October 2017, the number of cases attributed to the Croydon Cat Killer was 370 and rising. And at this point, the police suggested it was possible there were copycats. By December that year, the first victim outside of the M25 was found. That was 1-year-old Rusty, who was left in a plastic bag on the owner's doorstep in Northampton. Now, you could say that whoever found the cat would have placed it in a plastic bag and known that the cat belonged to this house. Perhaps it's a well-meaning stranger who found the cat run over, but unfortunately, the family's 14-year-old made that grim discovery, finding her beloved cat in a plastic bag on her driveway. Then
Jesus.
Topsy, this is all in Northampton, Topsy, a 15-year-old cat, went missing after it was last seen on the driveway of its owner's home, also in Northampton. The next morning, the cat's mutilated remains were found stuffed inside a carrier bag and left on a path outside the house. Later that year, in October, 2 cats were found in a suburb of Northampton, which prompted Northamptonshire Police to issue advice to owners, which includes keeping all cats and rabbits indoors at night.
Yep.
Then November that year, a decapitated cat was discovered placed on top of a car near the owner's home. They couldn't find their head. How
Fuck.
awful.
Now, do you know what? I have to say, cats roam around a lot.
Yeah.
And quite often, I mean, our neighbour's cat comes in. Well, I actually don't even know what neighbour it is. So how
You
is
didn't know
this
who owns that
person-
cat?
No, no idea. I just call her the Queen. I have no idea what her real name is. But how does this killer know who owns this cat? Because it's not often
They would
clear
have found
unless
them
he's-
on the driveway. Often they don't go too far away. I mean, he must have seen them on, or I keep calling him a him. I don't know if it's a him or it's a they.
I call it a him too. Yeah.
Anyway, police said that these 5 deaths were being treated as part of the Met Police Operation Takahe. That is the name of the operation that was looking into the case of the Croydon Cat Killer, but later stated the Northampton deaths were not being linked to the others, and a 31-year-old man was arrested. I couldn't find any more information about that, unfortunately. The offences were similar to attacks in the London area, so officers couldn't be sure that they weren't carried out by the same person. Still no closer.
Right.
2017, there's a lady called Chantel of St Leonard's on Sea, which, as you may know, is near Hastings, down on the south coast.
Yes, it is.
She lost her beloved cat, Scooter, one night. The next morning, as she searched the street outside, a neighbour came over to say he had found Scooter at 1 a.m. She had been lying dead, the cat, had been lying dead on the pavement outside the neighbour's house, and he thought that Scooter could have been hit by a car. So even though there was not much traffic in their area at that time of night, so he went to find a blanket and covered the body. But when he returned, the body had disappeared. So he went and told Chantel anyway. He assumed that foxes had taken it.
Right.
Later that day, another neighbour approached Chantel to tell her she had also found Scooter at 5:30 a.m. on that neighbour's front lawn.
No.
Yeah. Listen to this. Now, this is a massive trigger warning. Okay. Trigger warning. Warning. Trigger. Scooter had been laid out as if she was stretching, except her tail had been removed with a clean cut and she had been sliced open from head to abdomen.
Oh my God.
Her entrails had been pulled out and laid beside her on the grass. Do you know who else did that? That's what the what's he called? What's he called?
No idea.
She's got no idea.
No idea.
We've got no idea.
No idea.
There is no idea between
No idea.
us. No idea.
No idea.
The Ripper.
Who?
The Ripper.
Jack the Ripper.
Jack the Ripper. Thank you. I was going to say the Yorkshire Ripper, but it wasn't him. That is what Jack the Ripper used to do to his victims.
My
Took out the
God.
insides, put it on the pavement next to them or the street next to them. Anyway,
Fuck.
in 2018, the Metropolitan Police concluded that the mutilations had not been carried out by a human and were likely to be caused by wildlife predators or scavenging on cats that had been killed in vehicle collisions.
Oh.
They believe it to be just an act of nature,
That's bullshit. I'm sorry. That's just wrong.
So 3 years after the first report of the Croydon Cat Killer, no evidence relating to an individual who may be committing these crimes had been found. There was no evidence of clothing, human DNA, or a murder weapon, and no CCTV footage had been recovered. So in 2018, September of 2018, the Met Police reported that in 3 instances where CCTV footage was obtained, foxes could be seen carrying bodies or body parts of cats. And in one case, CCTV showed a fox carrying a cat's head into a school playground in Catford. So it could be foxes.
Right.
Some of it could be. In post-mortem examinations conducted by the head of veterinary forensic pathology at the Royal Veterinary College, fox DNA was found on some of the cats' bodies. But was that because they were left out overnight and they were fair game?
That's what I think. The foxes thought, great, fresh meat, had a little dig around in it and then pissed off. They didn't cause it. They didn't do it.
So as a result of all this information, the Met finally closed the investigation on the 20th of September 2018, saying it was down to foxes and not a person.
Well, how convenient.
Yeah. So when the police were taking this seriously, they did have this to say. They had a profile drawn up by the National Crime Agency that suggested that the killer's problems with cats stemmed from a deeper problem with women, or with one woman in particular, because cats are feline and women are feminine, feline,
Yep.
blah, blah, blah.
Okay, that's the connection.
So
Yep.
there's this nice man called Detective Sergeant Andy Collin, who did as much as he could, I suppose, until he hit the brick wall. But he said, cats are targeted because they are associated with the feminine. The killer can't deal with a woman or women who are troubling him. The concern we have is that if it isn't a particular person who will be at some risk eventually, then at some stage he'll escalate or feel brave enough to move on to vulnerable women and girls, either elderly or very young women. That was the police's main concern at the time in pre-2018.
Right. So this ties into what we have said in previous episodes about the psychological profile of killers, where often they start their psychopathic traits by killing animals and they move on to people. Fucking hell.
Yeah. Well, Dr. Naomi Murphy, who works within the Dangerous and Severe Personality Disorders Unit at HM Prison Whitemoor in Cambridgeshire, said this extreme form of cruelty to animals strongly suggested the work of a sadist, someone who enjoyed harming other creatures. She says, because these killings involve weapons, it seems like the type of person who plans and gets pleasure from thinking about the pain they are going to inflict. What happens when people are sadistic, like any kind of addiction, they often have to go further and further to satisfy their addiction, she said.
Yeah.
And like you said before about people who've gone on to murder, it has been proven, it's been hypothesized for many years, and the studies have been made. Jeffrey Dahmer, who dismembered 17 people 3 decades ago, had first practiced his butchery by cutting up dogs and cats and impaling their heads on sticks. Sorry, guys. I'm so sorry. Then there's the disgusting Moors murderer, Ian Brady, who tortured and killed 5 children in the 60s. I hate talking about this guy. Boasted of killing his first cat when he was just 10 and went on to burn another cat alive, stoned dogs and cut off rabbits' heads before going on to target people.
Oh, my God.
And then there were the 10-year-olds Robert Thompson and John Venables, who we know their names because they were responsible for killing toddler James Bulger in 1993. They would shoot pigeons with air rifles and tie rabbits to railway lines to watch them be run over.
This is the thing, isn't it? That, you know, often these tendencies come out in children, and when your brain is that young and you think that killing is okay, I guess it is a natural escalation to because it becomes normalized, and also I guess you become desensitized to what you're doing.
Yeah.
So then you just move on to get that thrill.
That hit. They've done academic research, Michelle, actually, to prove what you've just said. And they've unearthed distressing evidence on the psychological effect of children who witness cruelty to animals.
Okay.
So awareness needs to be raised, and the crimes need to be taken seriously to avoid the very real risk of escalating the trauma by acting out against both animals and people.
Did you ever read the book or see the film?
What's shipped
We
down?
Need to talk about Kevin.
No. No, I didn't.
Okay. I had the misfortune of reading it. It's a harrowing
Is
read
it?
about a kid who, I mean, he's just born bad. You know, he's
Right.
just born evil. And he starts off torturing animals, and it moves on. Honestly, like, if you want to be disgusted and upset, please read We Need to Talk About Kevin. Otherwise, avoid.
Wasp Factory was like that as well. Anyway, I'm going to wrap this up because I'm feeling rather queasy now, and I'm sure all our lovely eavesdroppers are too. Soz, guys. This is the final word that I'm going to say from the Snarl Facebook page. Is a reaction to Bouquet's arrest. Well, unfortunately, I've managed to cut it from my... Where is it?
One moment, please.
What's that you say?
Just need to look at my notes.
You nerds! We can't stress how significant this case and verdict is for our own investigation into the UK animal killer. We hope now that our investigation and forensic evidence will be taken seriously, and that a stealthy killer can certainly avoid being seen and caught. Bouquet slipped up. We can only hope that one day the killer or killers we are investigating do the same. This test case sets a legal precedent. Foxes do not carry knives. The end.
Oh, Geordie, I don't know if I should be thanking you for that. Case, I feel absolutely sick and I feel distressed.
Well, yeah.
And it's because, look, I'm not a dog person. I'm a cat person. And the idea, and cats are smart. You know, cats are super smart and they're wily and they're fast. How can somebody catch 400 of them? What the fuck are they doing?
Somehow they have figured out a way of doing it. I mean, maybe it isn't 400. Maybe it's more that haven't been reported.
Yeah.
Maybe some of that number has been reported falsely because they have been attacked by foxes or hit in a car accident and then pulled apart by a fox. But there's documented evidence that some of these animals, if not all of them, have been murdered by a person on purpose.
And posed. This is the thing. That's
There's
intervention.
some serious psychological, something's not going well there, and they do need to keep searching. I think I'd love the police to start this up again. But anyway, we'll see how it goes.
I want them to crack this case wide open because
Crack it.
for me, animals,
They're innocent.
they're so defenseless in so many ways. And, it just makes me feel so
Well,
sick.
it gives us other nice human beings a bad name, really, doesn't it?
www.eavesdroppinpodcast.com. Hello at eavesdroppinpodcast.com. Email us a story.
Share, like, all of that.
Follow our social media.
Like, subscribe.
Instagram and Facebook.
Yep, you know what
At
to do.
eavesdropping_.
You got that right.
Just eavesdropping. The G.
Well, do you know what? I have to give a massive trigger warning for my story because my story is also incredibly sickening, and please, it's a juice dropper. Don't listen to this while you're having your breakfast.
Suck it on a juice box. Juice dropper.
I don't. Oh God! But look, when we talked about this episode, I know that you had asked me to look into stalkers. This is not about stalking.
Oh.
Not even a little bit. I'm so sorry. I went down a wormhole because I was looking for animals and stuff. And also I remembered this episode of Gentleman Jack. Did you ever see that?
I never saw it.
Oh, I loved it.
Okay.
It's like this lesbian romp, but she's Saran Jones, great actress. She's the lead in this. Anyway, there's this scene where, because it's set in the 1800s or something, there's a scene where this poor abused woman is being, thumped by her husband, and she gets her revenge by killing him and feeding them to the pigs.
Ooh.
And all that's left is a belt buckle at the end. And so I don't know why, but when I knew that you were looking at this cat killer, I thought, oh gosh, I remember that episode. And I just did a little research and I went down a wormhole.
Oh dear.
So, trigger warning, guys. This is the case of Canadian serial killer Robert Pickton.
Oh.
So, Robert, nickname Willie
What?
Pickton. His nickname, Willie. His nickname
okay.
is Willie.
Not
I'm
Bobby.
sorry, but that's no, it's Willie. And
Billy
we all
Bobby.
know what a Willie is. We all
It's
know
a
what a Willie
penis, isn't it?
It's
Am
a
I
peeny
right?
peen penis. Yes, a Willie. Have you never called a
Of
Dick a
course I
Willie?
have.
So, Robert's nickname is Willie, but I'm going to call him Robert because I don't like...
You don't like saying Willie too often.
No. But, so Robert was part of a pig farming family about half an hour east of Vancouver. And look, although that might sound like it's this lovely kind of the good life scenario, apparently this family was the kind of family who never washed. They let their animals just like roam free in the house. And according to reports, and this is down the line, when police actually made reports about the property, they said inside Robert's house, they found animal shit and mud smeared on pretty much every surface of the house, including tables and walls, ceiling, and it just fucking stank.
Call Kim and Aggie.
They would walk out because there were bugs and maggots like in all of this shit all over the house. It was just pure filth.
My God.
So, I just wanted to give you some context there about this pig farm so you didn't think it was this, these lovely little pigs, frolicking in mud. It's grim.
And a country abode.
Idyll.
Yeah.
Yes. No, it's nothing like that.
Baking bread. More like baking feces.
Oh, Jesus
Ew.
Christ, Georgette.
Sauce.
Anyway, so when Robert's parents died, they left the pig farm to the kids, but neither Robert's sister Linda or his brother David wanted the farm. So Robert, who at that point was, according to reports, considered a bit dim and had trained as a butcher. This is key information, by the way.
Yeah.
He agreed to run the family farm. So he moved to a remote part of the farm while his brother, David, lived in the family house. But David had nothing to do with the farm. But over time, Robert kind of neglected the running of the pig farm. And in the end, he decided to turn it into sort of a hobby farm called the Piggy Palace Good Time Society.
I like that.
Well, hold your horses on
Maybe
that
not.
one.
Okay.
Because on paper, it was a not-for-profit charity that ran events and dances and exhibitions for sports organisations and worthy causes. But in reality, Robert was actually putting on raves and wild parties in what was a converted slaughterhouse. Not nice.
Okay.
Where all the local Hells Angels and all the sex workers of Vancouver would have these kind of like, druggy parties. It was all the underbelly.
I've got an image.
Yeah.
Shall I tell you what it is? Have you seen
Yeah.
Dusk Till Dawn by Tarantino and Robert Rodriguez? And it's got Tarantino and George Clooney as two vampire hunters, I think they are. And
Okay,
Salma Hayek's in
yeah.
it. It's a crazy film. Lots of blood and gore and lots of bikers. And
Right. Well, this is what he did. On this dodgy pig farm, he, in the slaughterhouse, turned it into like druggy underbelly rave scene kind of thing. Where he would, they would all hang there and he'd put on these big fat vats of food and host cockfights and all that kind of thing.
would you eat any of that, Michelle? You'd have a bit of a dicky tummy after, I reckon. His hygiene certificate probably didn't come through in the post yet.
Well, let's just
I'd
say
say
shit in your food was the least of your problems.
Oh.
Anyway, so The British Columbian Police first became interested in Robert in 1997 when a Vancouver sex worker called Wendy Lynn IS accused Robert of attempted murder. And look, apparently, and trigger warning, I'm just going to say this probably about 1,000 times during the story, but trigger warning, apparently he took Wendy back to the pig farm, pumped her full of drugs, had sex with her, and then after they had finished doing it, she sort of noticed handcuffs and weapons in the kitchen. And
God.
before she knew it, Robert had attacked her and tried to force her into these handcuffs. Thing is, she managed to grab a kitchen knife and stab him in the face.
Oh!
But apparently, another trigger warning, guys. Apparently, he pulled the knife out of his face, turned it on her, and cut her stomach open.
Oh my God.
Yeah, okay, yeah. So I don't know how, but somehow Wendy managed to escape the farm, and she ran to a neighbour's house where she was just naked, and apparently
stomach open.
Trigger, her intestines were hanging out.
Oh.
And the authorities arrested him, but fucking bizarrely, in January 1998, the courts dropped the charges against him because he said it was self-defense against her because
she'd
she was
stabbed
trying
him.
to rob him.
Right.
She was trying to rob him, apparently, even though clearly he was trying to, like, fuck knows what.
Yeah.
After he'd had sex with her. So they let him go. And he was free to keep on keeping on, right?
Geez.
So thing is, the community weren't really that keen on all this, like bikers and druggy raves being at the pig farm. So a few months later, the local council sued Robert for violating zoning orders because he was neglecting the farm and what the farm was zoned for. And they also sued him for holding these illegal raves. But Robert clearly did not give two shits about this because on New Year's Eve, the 98-99, after he'd already had all this trouble with the council, he put on a massive New Year's Eve rave, which eventually led authorities to issue an injunction, like banning all future parties on the property, and he had his non-profit status for the Bicky Palace Good Time Society revoked.
Good.
So at this stage, Robert, I think, must have been thinking, well, fuck, what am I going to do now? So he made a half-assed attempt to get the pig farm back on track. But on February 6, 2002, police raided the farm looking for illegal firearms, which I guess they found because both Robert and his brother David, who I mentioned had been living on the farm but in the main house, they were both arrested. But when the police searched the house and the property, what they found was more than just guns.
I feel like this is a film that I just don't want to watch.
Yeah, it's fucking terrifying. So, trigger warning again.
Oh, Michelle.
Brace yourself and please, cover your ears if you don't want to hear this. Apparently, they discovered bodies hanging from hooks.
Oh, God, that is a film.
Piles of scalps in the slaughter room.
This is bloody... What's it called?
Buckets of human guts.
What?
And piles of women's clothes, bags and jewellery.
This sounds like... What's that bloody film? Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Fuck knows, maybe he was inspired. But
wow.
look, turns out for decades, Robert had been picking up... Decades?
Oh, Michelle.
Decades.
I hate the world.
I fucking hate the world. Honestly, I feel so lucky to be living in a tiny little bubble where the worst thing that happens is somebody throws litter on the ground. But anyway,
God.
Poor old Vancouver had this fucking asshole Robert to deal with, who had been picking up sex workers and murdering them for decades. But not just murdering them. Trigger warning.
Oh, fuck, Michelle.
He slaughtered them the way you would slaughter a pig.
So he hung them upside down.
He would string them up. He would gut them.
Okay.
He would remove their hair. He would saw them in half. And he would just butcher them. And then he would feed these bodies to the pigs. And look, there were hundreds of pigs on that property. So there was barely a trace of these women left. And in fact, one of the things that led to Robert's undoing is because he would just chuck these body parts to the pigs. But because he did that, there were bits of bone fragments and human remains in the mud and all the pig shit that these pigs were living in.
Yeah.
So, look, to the credit of the Canadian government, they spent 2 years and nearly $70 million sifting through the soil and pig shit on the property looking for bone fragments.
Wow.
Which they found loads of because...
So they could identify the victims.
Yep. And he'd never... Because he was like a dodgy farmer, he'd never drained or cleaned the waste system or the property. So they found decades worth of evidence. And again, trigger warning.
Oh, Michelle!
That
how many more?
wasn't even... That's not even the grimmest part of this case.
Michelle!
I know. So look, not only did Robert feed his victims to the pigs, he took their hair and bones to a nearby rendering plant where it was all turned into gelatin and sold to companies. So if you were eating gummy bears or you were using makeup with gelatin in it...
In 1999.
You
and the 10 years
maybe
before.
were eating these dead women. I don't know. But there is still worse to come because... after Robert had cut up his victims, he took like the good meat, the flesh off the bones, and ground it up into mince and sausage meat and sold it to the local stores.
I fucking
or
didn't.
he gifted it to the local orphanage.
Oh,
and remember
no.
how I said
That's
he'd cook
horrific.
up all these pots of food for the Piggy Palace Good Time Society raves? It was his
Oh, God!
So all those bikers were eating these victims, right?
Was there any bikers that came forward and said, I've been traumatized for life because I now know that I ate human people?
I really don't know. So, but I mean, they're tough, aren't they? Those bikers are tough. Those Hells
they're that
Angels.
tough.
They'd be like, yeah, I ate a person. I don't know.
I don't think
But-
so.
I don't know. So the upshot of all of this is that in February 2002, Robert was arrested and put into prison.
2002?
Yes.
I thought you said they found this all out in 98, 99.
No, that was when he got that sex worker and cut her stomach open.
Okay, so he was
And
still
then-
free to carry on for another couple of years.
Yes,
Gee
for another
whiz.
few years. And then, so February 2002, he was thrown into prison. He was arrested and put into prison, where he told his cellmate, who actually was an undercover police cop.
Okay.
Police
cop.
Why did I say that? Policeman cop. Police cop.
Oh, please, Mr.
An
Policeman.
undercover policeman.
Yeah.
He told this guy he'd killed 49 women and he wanted to kill one more to make it the big 50.
Oh, God.
And apparently there are these police, when they do the drawings, when you get an illustrator. There's a picture of him.
Composite artist or whatever they call them.
Yeah, one of those, or courtroom artists, And he did a sign with his hand, 5, and then an O. He wanted the big 50, which is so fucking chilling. And that the only reason he'd been caught was that he'd gotten sloppy in his aim to reach 50, and he got a bit complacent because he got away with it for so long. And look, the police have found the DNA of so many people, men and women, not just all of these sex workers on the farm. But they decided to only go after him on a few murders that they really could corroborate. And in 2007, he was convicted of the second-degree murder of 6 women, where he was sentenced to life in prison with no possibility of parole for 25 years.
So he was in prison
the longest
for 5
years
before he was
remanded,
convicted.
yeah.
Okay, right.
So the court was just dragging on. The case was dragging on.
God.
And this is apparently the longest sentence for murder under Canadian law at that time. So he
Life
got
without
the book
parole.
thrown. Yeah, well, 25 years parole was the maximum. So he got the book thrown at him. And honestly, this case just makes me feel absolutely sick because it's just so fucking grim.
Yeah,
And
man.
He's Canada's worst and most prolific serial killer.
That's their number
And he
one,
went-
is it?
Yep, and he went undetected for so
long. And what's the bet? He started killing animals at a very young age, or privy to seeing animal animals being killed and hurt.
Do you know what? It's
at a
really
young
interesting.
age.
When I was reading a lot of notes on this case, there was actually an incident where when he was very young, he actually formed attachments to some of the pigs on the farm, right? And then one day he said to his mum and dad, and he would give them names, and it was like, where's Sparky or whatever?
Not
and
Sparky.
Well, I don't know.
Because I have a story about Sparky.
No,
I do. I was just thinking about Sparky. You read my mind.
This is
in that very moment. I know. No. Sparky was in my mind and you said it.
Geordie, that is
what
crazy.
happened?
Okay.
I'll tell you my story about Sparky in a second. You go ahead.
Well, just to finish this off, yes, he said, where's Sparky or whatever the pig's name was. And the parents said, he's just in the shed. And Sparky had been slaughtered and strung up and was bleeding. And apparently he was extremely traumatized from this at a very young age. And psychologists believe that this could have had serious psychological impact on him in a sociopathic way. But it sounds to me like they were the kind of family who just were... Like I said, the way they lived, this isn't right.
Mm-hmm.
There was something wrong with
yeah.
this family. So, yeah, sorry for that story, guys. That was absolutely fucking grim.
Are you listening to me?
Why are you
interrupt.
crying?
Eavesdropping.
Dropping trolley. Murdered.
So the reason why I brought Sparky up was because some years ago, pre-kids for us, thank God, we went to my brother-in-law's place out in Germany, which is on the lakes, in the lake country out there. And every year we'd have this big, there was a big festival of that week that we were there called the Fisher Fest.
Festival of Lights. Oh,
no,
yes, okay.
Fisher Fest, where, you put on, you can enter a float, what do you call it?
A floating
raft of some design. Exactly.
And I've
we would
seen
design
yours,
things.
and yours were beautiful. Honestly,
and often
Paddy
we'd
did
win.
wonderful things with twigs and glad wrap. He did wonderful
That's right.
things. Yes.
Anyway, one year, because it was a big party afterwards and a lot of the locals would come and join us afterwards, one year a family had a pig and they bought a pig, Sparky, for the reason of letting their 3 children get to know it. And then at some point, Sparky was always going to get the chop, right? Mm-hmm. But the kids weren't really on board with that. And they weren't told, maybe. I don't know what happened, but I just remember that night was a bit upsetting. In the day, Sparky was delivered to us having been to the bloke that kills Sparky. What are they called? The abattoir. He'd been to the abattoir, delivered a whole gutted, thank God, pig to my husband and his brother, who then had to set up a big table and tried to, with YouTube videos, tried to get a big pole through Sparky from mouth to back end so he could go on a spit, because he was going to be a pig on a spit. And unfortunately...
With an apple in his mouth.
Yes. Unfortunately, poor Sparky, his kid, the owners came with the kids and they were beside themselves. They were hating everybody who had a little bit of Sparky in their mouth that night. It was very upsetting. Oh, Sparky.
How did Paddy actually get to skewer that pig properly? Or?
I was videoing this, and at one point, his brother is a real peace love kind of guy, Jim. He was holding the pelvis while Paddy was smashing the other end with a mallet, and he felt the pelvis go under his hands, and that was it. That was the end for him. So Paddy's a bit more sturdy, but Jim's not so into that. He can't even catch a fish. He gets upset.
I get upset at that. I mean, we were in Sweden recently, and Andreas caught a fish, and I was like, put it back, and he did. He threw it back. It was only a little one, but Andreas' sister, her husband for his 50th was gifted 2 pigs, Britta and Inga, I believe, and they were fattened up and cooked for the 50th. That was it. I know, and they always tease me. They always say, "Fancy a pig, Michelle?" No, thank you.
Fancy a pig?
Fancy a pig. They're always trying to get me to eat meat, but no, I cannot. But you know what? I remember as a kid, and look, my sister might have better memory about this. Back back when we were growing up, we were moved into a government house in a very, very new government complex where they were doing some kind of, social integration experiment, as they do in Canberra, because that was the hotbed for, developing school systems, and they were also doing it with like residential areas. And we were put into a place where there were no backyards, but all the houses backed onto a communal backyard in the centre, because they wanted to encourage community
gardens,
community between and between all the residents.
Great idea.
So we had in theory, and I remember we had all different cultures living in this kind of sort of like a cul-de-sac, but with the centre open. And there was, I think it was a Maori family, and they did a hungy.
Oh yeah, we've done that.
which is
buried.
actually the buried pig. And
Paddy did that.
I just remember as kids, we were beside ourselves with joy. We couldn't get enough of this meat. Our faces were smeared in pig fat. It was just so joyful. I'm obviously now vegetarian. I wonder if that has anything to do with it. But I loved it. I absolutely loved it. And obviously culturally there is a real connection between, like animals on spits, because that's Hawaiian, isn't it?
I don't know.
And then,
Caveman.
underground, and because there's like a Filipino thing, I think, too. So, it's very...
Paddy's done that with lamb and pork, I think. He was preparing it. We had a whole weekend before a big birthday party that he had, and he did the burying thing and the rocks and all the grasses and the meat was wrapped in hessian bags and all sorts of things and marinated and all this stuff. It didn't work. It wasn't cooked through.
Oh dear.
It was in there for like 2 days.
Oh gosh, yeah. I guess you've got to control the temps on those things.
He does love to give it all a go. He gives it a red hot bash, my hubby.
He does. But what about this idea of animals? Why do we eat certain animals and not others?
Well, like, why don't we eat cats? Probably because they're a bit stringy, or dogs.
Do you think it's because we can have a connection with some animals and we think that we can't with others?
Maybe because they eat dogs in China. Apparently, guinea pigs they eat somewhere. Where is that? Peru. They eat guinea pigs on sticks or splayed out like that.
Well, even in Thailand, I remember being in the market and they have fried bats on sticks as a snack, on all sorts of things. I didn't try that, obviously, but I don't know. Oh, gosh, the animal world. Well, look, how about we awkward segue into another topic that's been red hot in my household this week?
Is it the strap-on?
No, but speaking of the strap-on, I said to Jen, "Oh, Jen, did you listen? Mum, did you listen?" And she said, "Yes, and of course I knew what that pink belt was." I said, "Mum, it wasn't a belt," but I said, to be fair, I guess it probably was a belt on.
You have to wear it wrapped around something, don't you?
No, this actually applies more to poo.
Okay, because of last week's episode where you revealed about poo camp.
Well, no, actually, it's just I don't know why this has become a big topic. I mean, this is not a new topic in my household. This is an ongoing topic, but it's flared up recently.
Oh, is it the toilet paper usage?
Yes.
Oh no.
Andreas has once again been on me about the fact that he thinks I use too much toilet paper. And I keep saying, how much is too much?
I would say MYOB, Andreas. MYOB.
What's the MYOB?
Mind your own business.
Oh, mind your own beeswax. And
mind your own bumhole. Sorry.
And so anyway, I was on the toilet the other day and I looked down and I saw this.
God, here we go. Not more worms.
No. Not this
God.
time. I saw this roll of toilet paper underneath the vanity unit, and I thought, what the hell's that doing under there? Andreas has changed the toilet paper, and this is just like rolled under. So I picked it up and I put it into the cupboard. And the next time he went to the loo, he came out and he said, "You just ruined my test." And I said, "What are you talking about?" And he said, "I wanted to see with my role, how much I use compared to how much you use.
Oh, that was his own very own personal role.
Yes. And because he says that I use way too much. But the thing is, I'm a scruncher.
Yeah, we've
I
discussed
scrunch.
this.
He's a folder.
He only uses 2 sheets. 2 sheets Andreas, we call him.
Well, he uses 2 sheets for a number 2. I use more than that just for a number 1. So
Right. Well, that's the thing. You have to wipe the front bottom as well. So it doesn't really matter. He just has to deal with the fact he shares his life with a woman. She wipes the front bum, sometimes needs a bit of extra help at the back. And that is just the way it is. So he has to live with it, I'm afraid. God, what is it that a life of loneliness or a couple of extra quid a week on toilet paper? What would you rather, Andreas?
do you know what? I actually in recent years have been quite enjoying a wet wipe.
Oh, are they safe to flush?
No, I don't flush. No.
Okay. What do you do with them?
I put them in the bin.
Okay, good.
And no, I don't flush. No.
A nice bin full of shitty wet wipes next to the toilet. That's always nice. God, why are we talking about this? This whole episode needs a massive trigger warning.
Oh, it does. It's all gone wrong. How did we go from aliens to basically eating humans and wiping your ass with too much toilet paper?
When did we talk about aliens this episode?
We didn't last week.
Oh.
Last week was the aliens and all sorts.
Yeah, we'll get back to that.
Oh, gosh, it's all a bit random, isn't
If
it?
people are having a difficult time listening to us talk about poo and the Butcher of Vancouver and cat killers, then perhaps they ought to just write in like I keep asking you to, and no one's bloody done it.
No, and you know what? If you're upset by any of this, just please go back and re-listen to the fairies episode because that's a sweet one.
Yes. Other episodes available.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, that's really about it from me. I think
that is more than enough from you. Thanks, Michelle. Well, you know what, guys? We look forward to you eavesdropping another time. Who knows what we're going to talk about next time? We know. You don't. You've got to tune in to find out.
Yes. And in the meantime, keep
eavesdropping.
Eavesdropping.
Eavesdropping. Eavesdropping.
Dropping.
Eavesdropping.
Dropping.
Eavesdropping. Eavesdropping.
Dropping.